All right. Good afternoon and welcome to our joint SONAR and E2 Open webinar entitled Stop Flying Blind, Turn Freight Market Context into Confident Logistics Decisions. So welcome. We're going to go through a little bit about the partnership with SONAR and E2 Open and the best way to use greater freight market context to improve transportation decision making. So we're getting a lot of signals every day about what's happening in the freight industry and what's happening in the market. Lots of news happening, lots of regulatory decisions that are going to have a large impact on available capacity. Lots of things going on that we are hearing and tons of data points. So the concept today is to take a lot of that market data and those market concepts and turn it into actionable decisions, let you guys know what to do with it. So I'm going to let my guest today, Stephen Husk, give a quick introduction of himself, and then we'll get right to it.
Yeah, great to be here. Thanks, Julie. Name's Stephen. I'm the Director of Data Services at E2 Open, and I'm a part of our TMS Logistics group, and more specifically our Managed Services group that's doing kind of a fully outsourced transportation model for customers on a day-to-day basis, but also has a lot of specialized roles that rely on data to do their jobs, like carrier specialists, logistics analysts. And so we're really responsible for helping those teams be able to leverage the data that we have in the transportation management solution, but also some of the stuff that we're able to get through our partners like you guys, the SONAR rates and indexes that we're going to be talking about today more. So excited to be here. This is kind of a passion topic of mine, so I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, our first meeting, whenever you were like coming up with all these ideas and had some, it was super exciting. So excited to get you in front of an audience to talk about it a little bit more. So I'm Julie Kamp. I'm the Chief Marketing and Operations Officer at SONAR. So I get to work with our customers a bit. I get to work with our partners. I get to work on a lot of the content that we put out. So excited to be able to talk today about this. Stephen, do you want to give us just sort of a high-level overview of E2 Open and what the end-to-end solutions might look like?
Yeah. So E2 Open is a WiseTech global group company, and we provide a kind of range of end-to-end supply chain cloud-based solutions for customers. Really, the goal is to help this complex supply chain end-to-end process, make that easier for customers, right? Help them to orchestrate better in their supply chains. A big part of that is our partner network. Think carriers, suppliers, those kinds of things, and SONAR being one of them. And my group, as I already mentioned, is in the logistics bucket that you see on the slide. So we're helping our customers manage typically domestic transportation and using, again, data like we have from SONAR to help make better decisions, which I think really kind of leads us into the topic for today. So.
Yeah, so we talk about SONAR and freight market intelligence, and why this all matters, right? Is SONAR has this large breadth of data that allows benchmarking, but takes it further to provide context of what's happening in the market and why some of the indices that we have or the rates that we're showing might be moving based on how they're related to the other indices and some of the context that we can give. What's really cool about what we're going to show today is it's that SONAR data that provides not only rate benchmarking or indicators of what's happening with capacity, but that context, and then it's putting it right inside of the data that E2 Open already has and can provide via reporting services to their customers to make it incredibly customized to, I guess, whatever problems that you're looking to solve, and you can talk about some of those and how they do that. But it's cool to be able to see the SONAR data right there in the E2 Open platform and right next to ultimately our shared customers' very specific data and all of their historical data and what's happening in their network. So with that, I think we're going to get right into giving a live demo of the product. Stephen is going to walk us through what it looks like and some highlights.
Yeah, great. Let's jump right in. And Julie, I can get going. So if, feel free to stop me if
Yeah, that's what we're here for. I'm excited.
if there's something that is particularly interesting you want me to go into. Like you said, we have this partnership now where we can bring that Sonar data, that really rich benchmark data and market intelligence right into the platform where people are making decisions, right? So there's two ways people can engage with the Sonar data for the TMS. One is through an integration right into the planning tools themselves. So when they're actually planning freight, they can see those benchmarks. What we're looking at today, though, is looking at the analysis, kind of the post-mortem, if you will, although that's not really, I don't really like that word because we're actually looking at real-time data. So we're looking at data that's coming from our TMS in real time. We're looking at Sonar rates, which are as near real time as it gets when it comes to market intelligence, and getting those updated every single day.
And I love that, seeing like real problems, real changes, real things happening that day and up to the minute versus like you sort of mentioned before, postmortem. Like postmortem, you're like, okay, we messed that up. How do we fix it before next time? But we've already messed it up. Catching it as early as possible, and when you still have time to do something about it, I think is what makes this so cool versus after the fact reporting.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we have included in this are things that we plan for tomorrow, right? So we're not just looking at the past, although a lot of what we're going to talk about today is going to be through the lens of what's happened historically. So the tool itself, I don't want this to be a black box either. I'm kind of tired of hype in the industry of data analytics and AI. I will try not to ever use that word again in this presentation. But really, this is straightforward. It works. It's the methodology is simple. So I'm going to go into that real quick. I think the best way to do that is just to show you some of the details, the kind of in the weeds details that are available, and then we'll move back to some of the more cool stuff that we want to talk about. What you see here is kind of a sampling of the data that's behind this platform. Right, it's just a table view, but we're seeing every single shipment that we have, some information around it. And for those of you that have our TMS, essentially anything that's in our TMS is available through this tool to filter on, to group by, to perform an analysis with. And I can see here how this, really what's happening in the tool behind the scenes is, if I scroll over, I can see a shipper rate. That's the rate I'm paying right now for that particular load. And then the Sonar rate. Mind you, we're showing the spot index here, but with the click of a button over here, I can change it to the contract. I can also change it to show you a budget that I upload, or like a benchmark that we decide for ourselves, maybe based on some other criteria. So there's other ways, and those combined actually, I think, make it an even more valuable experience. But really what we're going to look at for the rest of the time is rolling this up and trying to see, okay, where's the highest variance? Where's the biggest opportunities? And I show this because, I mean, this is a lot of the headache work, right? A lot of the headache work for shippers is getting that point where they have a real-time data feed where they can benchmark, I don't know, 500,000 loads instantly, right? That's not something that people can typically get to. So we've done that work for you. Now you can just play and you can
that's really powerful.
Discover. Yeah. So I'm going to go ahead and switch back to that screen that we were before. This high level really is the core metric, if you will, of what we're trying to look at in this particular dashboard, and that's variance to our benchmark. So you saw we had two rates. Let's say, the benchmark was $1,000, your rate was $1,500. Well, then that one load, the variance is $500, right, or 50%. And so we roll that up in aggregate across the whole business. We can drill back down to however far we want to go. And then that becomes really valuable for us in order to find opportunities. And I want to take a pause here.
So is this the baseline, and is the darker blue, so explain, is showing the variance as a percentage from the Sonar spot index that this shipper actually paid.
Yep.
So walk us through the difference between 2025 and then what started happening in December of 2025 and January 2026 to show such a big change.
Yeah, no, good eye. That's exactly what we want to look for when we're doing these tools, right? That this is kind of the point of this kind of benchmarking is, you notice that, right? That something changed in November, December. Well, what we know changed is the market. The market in December was one of our, as far as the past few years, was one of our biggest peak holiday seasons that we've had. And then you see January, February, those typically when capacity starts to become available again, but we had winter weather. So it was particularly tight. You have, again, a lot of headwinds for capacity throughout 2026. So what does this say? Well, this tells us that our strategy is working. That strategy being having stability in our rates in order to avoid the volatility of the spot market, right?
So they're continuing to be able to pay contract rates, and this year as spot rates have continued to rise.
Exactly. And I'm guarantee
And so
they
the
have
variance continues to widen.
exactly. And I guarantee there's deterioration happening in their rates. But it's interesting when you start looking through this lens, it's a quite positive story actually, right? And actually if we wanna kind of validate that a little bit, down here we have a table that breaks it down by the type of carrier. So we have, and what I'm going to look at here is primary carriers. And so for our system, that means they're on a routing guide and they've got capacity committed to them.
Yes.
So they're like a contracted carrier.
Yep.
And if I click on that, you can see that story. They've got fairly competitive contract rates, even in 2025. But as those have held, to the extent that they've held, they've seen quite a bit of cost avoidance on all those lanes, which is really exciting. This is something you can take to your finance team or your leadership. And honestly, sometimes
the carrier relationships are working here.
Yeah,
they're
they're working.
Accepting the freight.
Exactly. I could slice this a number of different ways.
So you can see, okay, if we're looking at the summary, and we're looking at, all right, so the total other, so primary spot market backup, does it show you like how, from a cost standpoint, it shows you how the routing guide is holding up, but does it show you from a like tender standpoint how the routing guide is holding up, how far they're flowing down, how much is getting accepted by primary?
Yeah, all that information is available in our system and throughout our reporting. On this screen, you're not seeing that, but let's move to a different one to kind of illustrate that, because we start to get some of those other metrics that I think are important to talk about.
And I don't want to sidetrack you if
No,
there's something else you wanted to show.
absolutely.
I just think the routing guide is fascinating.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And this is an actually interesting set of data to look at because of some compliance issues that are in it, but we'll get to that. So this screen is now we have a few more KPIs across the top, right? We have our variance that we were talking about before. And before I actually get into the compliance piece, I just want to point out that market change, those two numbers in the middle there. Like this can be the difference between keeping your job and transportation.
Absolutely.
Being able to articulate this, right? If I just put my hand over if I could on the screen, I would. The market year-over-year change, and I show you 17% year-over-year change for me.
That looks bad.
That looks bad. That looks really bad, right? But 34%, the market is up 34%. So
they're doing significantly better than the market, right?
Yeah. So
it's a great way to be able to say like, yes, our costs have gone up, but there's a lot of it is due to things out of our control, and here's compared to the benchmark and what's happening with others. Yes.
And what's even more powerful, which goes into some people might say, well, I do that too. I go to CAS or something and get a benchmark, like a year-over-year kind of number, and I kind of compare mine. This is different though, because remember, we are benchmarking every single load.
And this is specific to their network, right?
Yes, yeah. So if I'm 80% outbound Florida, this is the year-over-year change for 80% outbound Florida freight, right? So this is as precise as a explanation you can give to how am I doing year-over-year compared to the market, right there in those two numbers. So I love that, and I feel like it's a career saver for many people.
Even on the flip side of it, when I was responsible for network and pricing on the carrier side, not the shipper side, if I would have had this going the other way and been able to show we've increased our rates X% compared to, specific to our network, compared to what others have done in their network, and show that our rates were holding up better than others, that would have been incredibly impactful to be able to show, inside my organization. So I'm sure it is the same on the shipper side.
That's why I think the webinar's rightly labeled Stop Flying Blind, right? Because this is kind of the point, right? If you're not taking into account this context, then you really are effectively flying blind, because you would have interpreted that as I'm doing terrible and I might lose my job this year, versus my strategies are working and I have
pretty good.
a cost avoidance of 17% and instead of a cost savings of 7%, right? Okay. So moving on, though, you can see we have an on-time performance metric now here. There's a lot of ways to measure on-time performance. We're just keeping it simple here for on-time delivery. We're looking at primary tender acceptance at 89%. It's pretty solid. Yes. And then the routing guide compliance at 30%, which is interesting. We'll dig into. And so we're going to see all that at a kind of more detail. We'll drill into that. But the visual here now also shows another dimension of the SONAR data that we have, right? It's not just about a single rate benchmark. It's about kind of that range of confidence, right? And so that
This
gray
is the part
region.
I love the most. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That gray region, which I love you guys do that because we do the same thing. I mean, we have our own metric for on-time delivery as an example with the exact same concept, right? So it flows really nicely. That's a really great kind of complementary data that we have going on. But so I can simultaneously flip between how am I doing on service against the market, how am I doing in cost against the market.
Yeah.
So yeah, you can see here that same narrative we just talked about with the rates, just shown a little differently now with cost per mile, with the banding. Our position has materially changed in the market. We used to be a little bit above the rate, and now we're in that kind of lower grade band. That means something we're doing is setting us apart from the rest of the marketplace, and we can point to something, and it's contract rates based on this data that we're looking at.
And then do you make suggestions like, I assume this shipper has 90% of their freight flowing contract, and anything that's transactional is irregular or something along those lines. Then do you guys go back and make those suggestions to say we need to look at the contract spot ratio or split?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and I'm gonna flip back because you said that. I'm gonna show this and answer it this way.
Okay, great. And then we'll come back to the map.
Yeah. Everyone wants to stay on the map. They're like, no, stay the map. So this is the two SONAR rates. You get the contract and the spot rate. Again, based on your network, what's in your network. Tells the same story we're talking about, contract rates. I mean, we're reiterating the same thing here. What I wanted to point out, though, is you mentioned guidance to our customers. So typically, our guidance is to basically have a plan for every load, right? You want to know what's the value you need for that. So what kind of service do I need? What's the minimum value delivery of my carrier that they have to have? And then also what's my kind of cost boundaries, if you will. So those things go into the planning process. So we would consider that compliance, consider doing that work and kind of routing guides. So then guidance can change based on the market. And that's, again, why we need to look at tools like this, because back at the beginning, we were coming off the peak of COVID, and the market just started softening. Shippers that were using this tool quickly pivoted. So they took that same strategy and they said, okay, I've committed 100 loads to this carrier. I'm not going to back down on that commitment because that's an important strategy for me. But instead of sending the next 20 that go over capacity to backup carriers, I'm going to set a rule that checks against the benchmark and tenders it out on the spot market instead, because the spot market's better.
The spot market is better.
And the backup carriers are just going to take it because the rates are extremely high. Yeah. So people would have looked at that and they would have said, oh, my routing guide compliance is really great because I'm going to a backup carrier. And we would have said, nah, I would rethink that strategy a little bit at this point, right? And shift that.
That's the perfect example.
Yeah. So back to our map.
Back to the map.
Back to the map, which I haven't gotten to explain yet. The map is also another cool illustration of some of the data we have with SONAR, which is the capacity data. So again, there's a lot of freight cost insights that we can get, but is $3,000 on that lane, is that representative of a difficult market, or is that representative of a soft market? I don't know. Well, now we do know because of some of the data that SONAR is able to give us. So the red is more of a tight capacity lane, blue is more of a soft market, and those are available lane by lane. We scroll down a little bit, we get this nice list of lanes, which you can export to Excel. I know everybody in transportation still secretly uses Excel.
100%, yes.
Yeah.
I mean, I try hard, but I lived my whole life. I did it, and yes. That's exactly why we have an Excel add-in at SONAR, because people want the data where they work, which is in Excel.
Which, that first screen I showed you with all the individual loads, I can tell how many times people have asked us, can we just get the Excel file, right? Yeah. Yes, indeed. We can get the Excel file. This is so much better. But still, so this is all of our lanes that we can see, and we can start, I'd say, triaging lanes. So maybe you'll come in here, you're looking for a rate on a lane, or you're trying to cover a load on a lane, or you're trying to kind of understand what's happening on a particular lane, or you want to use this to help find those lanes that are experiencing volatility or poor performance or whatever it might be. That's all here. And you'll notice the SONAR capacity scores there, the benchmark rates, all of that, all the data that SONAR has just integrated right there for you. For the sake of this, I'm just going to pick this top lane for us to drill into. Actually, I'm going to do, I think this one looks pretty good. Okay, that's a good example. Okay, so I click in here to our lane, and I can see on the map the lane that we're looking at, the regions that we're looking at here, and then we can see the SONAR rate, again, that banding. You see my rate.
For the specific lane.
For the specific
lane.
lane, yeah. And we get to see what we've just been talking about. The rates are going up in the market. Ours are going up too. I mentioned there's certainly some deterioration. We saw it in the percent increases, but it's not to the extent of the rest of the market. And so this is something where...
Again, I love that. Market year-over-year change 53%. My year-over-year change 22%.
Yeah.
So it's putting one more way to say this. It's putting your network and your spend in context.
Yes, exactly.
To what's happening in the market.
In context, so you can make an actual decision. Because if you didn't have that, then you might be going to this carrier who's actually probably a great partner and asking them lower rates. Doesn't seem like a good idea to me. I think you probably can search for some better opportunities, right? But you wouldn't be able to search for them without the data, right? Okay, but you'll notice too, it's broken down now. We clicked on the lane, kind of burst out. Now we see carriers. So we can see individual carriers here. And this is where that little compliance thing I mentioned comes into play. And we see this a lot. And in this case, this particular, in this demo data here, the shipper is, they're executing against contract rates fairly well, but they've got some, I'd say, process improvements that they need to happen. So you see this iron pike freight, the category of that carrier is other. That just means that someone punched in their rate and their SCAC, right?
Okay.
So someone's on an Excel still, and they need to stop using Excel.
They're not using the routing guide. They're doing what they want to do.
Yeah, they're on Excel. Maybe they're using a routing guide, but they prefer to type it in. I don't know. That's an issue, though. That could become an issue. So we would say that let's just make iron pike in the routing guide. Let's handle that in the routing guide so that we can track compliance against it and those kinds of things. But I can see both carriers. I can see the rates that both offer me. And I can see the performance that both offer me. In this case, I'm getting great service. So to that point, if I'm managing transportation and I'm flying blind, I might go to this carrier and say, give me a better rate or something, put pressure on them. Now that I look at this, the story is actually completely inverse. I want to protect this relationship.
Absolutely.
They're giving me on-time delivery at a lower than market cost. I need these guys, right? The story is completely changed. So it's not an exaggeration.
Exactly how much capacity can you give me? And so the risk you're mitigating then is, do I need to add another carrier too?
Yeah.
But how do I give them as much of here as they can take? Yeah.
Yeah. It's not an exaggeration to say you would be literally flying blind because you'd make the wrong decision, right? So yeah, again, that illustrates, we could go through example after example. We could do that all day on here and switch between the different views and see the performance here. I'm going to move though to another way to look at performance and really, I would say the idea of value. So I'm going to go to color shipper versus benchmark. I'm just going to make a couple adjustments here and just to make it a little bit bigger, I'm going to grab a couple more months of data. Let's just grab 2026. Okay, yeah, there we go. Now a nice full chart. Okay, so before I jump into this, I think what a lot of transportation teams forget to do, which I don't know how this happens, but I see it happen a lot, is define what value is for them, right? The strategy you employ to ship soup cans is a lot different than shipping laptops.
Yes.
I have seen shippers pursue low cost to the detriment of having a claim that wipes out all the savings they've produced at all, right? So we need to understand what is
OTIF
that.
can also wipe out any cost savings in a minute.
In a minute,
So,
exactly, yes. OTIF is a great example. So that's where we need to balance service and cost. Right now, we're doing a very simple analysis of this. We're looking at one metric versus another. So we're looking at their cost variance on the left-hand side of the screen and their service experience on the bottom of the screen. So the farther they are to the right, the better performance they are from an on-time delivery perspective. But I've seen a lot of shippers create composite scores. So they're looking at more than just, they might look at their tender acceptance and their on-time delivery and their pickup performance and how quickly they respond to appointment requests, something like all kinds of things, right? They can comp this.
Whatever it is that you value.
Yeah,
right?
whatever it is you value, exactly. So you have your value on the bottom, you have your costs on the left, and so you want people, you want to identify those that are delivering on the value. Now, in this case, we've quartiled it, so there's always going to be a bad group and a good group. Ideally, you don't have that in your network, and we've also structured it by lanes here. But what I love here is that immediately now we have a cluster of these dots, which are lanes, individual lanes, that are low performing and high cost. So when you're talking about what should I do then if in my network, what action should I take? Well, those are the places you focus on. The low hanging fruit. Yep. Where are you not getting value and you're paying a premium? That's the first place to start. And I guarantee you they exist. People will often, like, their eyes will pop open. Wow, I didn't know that was happening. Sometimes we'll get
paying them too much and they're not doing what I want them to do.
Exactly. And to drill into this group, it's not just a visualization. This is a method of analysis for us. So I click here and I get a little lasso option that pops up and I can just grab all these guys here. And now I'm looking at that subset, which is now quartiled too. So I can see the worst of the worst. If I wanted to keep going infinitely, I could.
Yeah, we got a problem from Victorville to Las Vegas.
Yeah, we got a problem there. So I could drill into that. I can go back to my lane summary or any of these other sheets that have lots of great details involved with them. And now I'm triaging the lanes that have low cost or high cost, low service.
So all of this updated to that subset.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah, instantly. So that's all there. I can save a bookmark of it and create a link and send it to my buddy, and he can open it up and see exactly what I'm looking at, right? Start actioning that.
Thinking back to the scatter plot, is that what we're calling it?
Let's go back there.
I assume some shippers have different value sets for different kinds of freight. Mm-hmm. To your point, like some freight can move slowly and pick up within 5 days, deliver within 5 days, and some freight you're delivering to a much more particular
just in time
receiver
or something.
Than others. So can they segment that in here as well? Like, can they segment different portions of their network?
Yeah. So within the TMS, and that again, that's bringing TMS and SONAR together. That's what's great. So in our TMS, we have a lot of great ways to categorize data. We have lots of custom options, but then also a lot of built-in options. So things like priority flags, they can tell you, well, this is designated as something that's, I've seen people put like a hot load, right? Something that needs to go now, right? We can see what service levels are put on it. Did it go in a team? Did it go, like, all kinds of things? You can mix and match the analysis.
So they can look at all their HVP freight here, where the cost might not matter as much as some of the other metrics.
Yeah, they can look at their assets different than their brokers. Perfect. They can look at, that's something to mention here is that what we're looking at is what, is just what we have here for this demo. But behind this, there's a data model that essentially includes all of that information, and that can be surfaced and used in this analysis seamlessly, right?
Well, that's what's so cool about it. Literally all their data is here.
Yeah.
And then it can be highly customized.
Yeah. We've seen people...
And then the context gets added because we have the SONAR data. So.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. There's so many different ways to leverage the data. And so, this kind of fits into a little bit of a best practice. I'll take a moment and pause and just, I think, talk a little bit about best practice here, because all this data is interesting, but it really depends on somebody defining that value. First of all, tool doesn't do that for you, right? I can't tell you what value is. I can't tell no one that. They have to define that based on their business needs. And then they have to actually start measuring it, right? We can't help with that, right? And they need to do that as part of a process, though. So a lot of times what happens is the market starts going crazy, and I get a bunch of people asking me, help me explain why I'm not doing terrible. I'm like, well, you should have been explaining that 6 months ago, right? You should be doing this every week. For our managed services groups, which have the benefit of learning from each other and getting like 50 years of experience every year. That's where I started out in. They get to learn these processes that matter. And so, they're looking at this week over week, month over month, and they're saying, what are my low performing high cost carriers or lanes this month? What am I going to do about it? What are they this week? Whatever the lens is that you're trying to look at, you can do that. And it's it takes discipline. It's not magic. It's not magic. You have to still do something to make it occur. So in this case, this might be something I do with my transportation team to bring it back to what we're looking at here every week.
Yeah.
What are the low performing lanes this week?
And what are we doing about it?
What are we doing about it?
Yeah, perfect.
Exactly. Right. Yeah. So again, lots of interesting ways to slice the data here. I'm gonna, unless you had anything else you want to see there, I'm gonna move on to another.
Yes,
no. Okay. So another one of my favorite views is called our event summary. I'm gonna go ahead and set us up here to do a month over month look, and I'll explain what that is in a second. So our event summary, why do we call it an event summary? Well, we use it a lot to explain the impact of something like an RFP event or something else. How often do you get asked, well, what my RFP rates were up 3% this year. What does that mean? It's like, well, this is meant to tell you that. This is meant to articulate that clearly for you. Another thing that we see this used for and we recommend doing is month over month or week over week look. So again, part of that discipline of every month, where am I moving relative to the market, negatively and positively? That'll become
It's the
clear.
same way that if you have a forecast, right, or goals, you're going to look at what you forecast and then where you are actually compared to that, right? And review it weekly and monthly. And in this case, you're just doing it based on here's what we planned for through our RFP or whatever. Here's what's happening in the market that might impact it, and here's how we're actually performing.
Exactly, and keep in mind, like I said, we can look at a budget here too. So in the same breath of doing a market-based measurement, I can use the same exact visuals and same exact logic to look at my budget.
Awesome.
Right, and that can tell me things too about my budget. Maybe my budget has some issues. So what we're seeing here is the same kind of variance trended, and we've highlighted the month of May and the month of April because that's what we're comparing. And what we're focusing in on is where does my position in the market change the most month over month? So a lot of people lose sight of this because they might think, well, that lane I'm beating the benchmark in that lane. I don't even need to think about it. Well, what if that lane has been going up 5% every single month for the past 4 months?
You're still having cost creep.
You're having cost creep. You didn't notice it until finally it's some kind of a problem, right? And so that's what this is designed to do. So month over month, we can see right now we've got it sort of based on savings. So a lot of data here. Let me make sure I try to draw your attention to the right things. This particular lane that comes to the top, if I look over on the right-hand side, the benchmark went up 86% month over month, which some people are like, what? Again, if you're not watching benchmarks, this is a SONAR, this is a spot market benchmark, right? Spot markets do change that dramatically. We're in road check, right? I mean, that's, and obviously we just had the crazy announcement from the Supreme Court. Like things are going to continue to be volatile. But the shipper themselves has only gone up 5.3%. So again, before I use this tool, 5.3% looks like cost creep. It looks like a problem that I need to maybe address. Now, I'm praying that my carrier doesn't continue to go up, and I'm trying to use that carrier even more, right? In this case, I can clearly articulate to finance or whoever else I need to explain things to, actually, we're avoiding $23,000 in cost because of market moved it this way and we didn't move that way, right? So this highlights a couple of things. That's just one example. You can see the second example is one where we actually had savings and the cost went up, the market went up. I'm going to flip it though, because there's always places where we're breaking down. Even when we're doing a great job on the whole, there's always places where we're breaking down. So, the top here, we have some issues out of Lebanon, it looks like, where cost has gone down month over month and my cost has gone up. That's a conversation that you have with whoever's planning the freight or the carriers that are moving the freight, right?
Yes.
And then even also interesting is we'll see some examples where costs don't change. And then the market changes, like we've talked about already, and you can see where that's starting to reach like an equilibrium of some kind, or you need to pay attention because maybe your contracts are starting to deteriorate to a point where you're going to get a cost increase. So all of that shows up here. And again, if I bring it back to practical, how do we use this? It's each week, each month, we need to go through the wins and the losses.
Yep.
Maybe top 5, I don't know, whatever you choose, pick a number and go through those and triage those or work on those lanes that are problems and make sure you continue the good practices that are giving you the savings and the cost avoidance.
Protect the good, fix the bad, right?
It really is simple. I don't want people to be intimidated by any of this because it's straightforward, the kind of actions that we're taking.
Yeah.
And that's what we try to make it with the data.
And your team that is there to support that, and we'll talk about this in a little bit. I want to understand a little bit about LAS versus RAS, and we'll talk about what those mean.
Yeah.
And so we can save that for then if you'd like. But as you talked about, like, don't let it get overwhelming. You have a team supporting your clients when they're using these products?
Yeah, we can go right into that. So for how this kind of works right now, so we have what's called LAS, or logistics as a service. Managed services is more standard, probably in industry, how people would refer to it. Anybody in that group has this available to them by default in their teams, partially because we're using it to help make sure we're driving cost out. Then there's also what we call RAS, or reporting as a service. And that's for our software customers that don't have a managed services group. They don't have some kind of specialist embedded in their team. And that's where they can leverage this data without those services. And yes, we are there with them. So so it's a slightly different relationship in the two scenarios. When it's LAS, we're bringing, at least we should be, we're bringing them the opportunities, right? And you're using the tool and saying, hey, this is what we're going to do. And when it's reporting as a service, we are maintaining this environment for them and training them in it. And then we're handing it over to them to help them do it. So we offer training and kind of light consulting in a way for those customers so that they can know how to use these tools and make sure that they stay up to date on the best data that's available to them. Far as
that's one of the questions that we had come in specifically. Do all E2 Open customers have access to this in, how do you say it?
ClickSense.
ClickSense?
Yeah, that's the business intelligence tool behind the scenes here that we use. Yeah. So all E2 Open TMS customers have access to this. They'd have to go through reporting as a service if they're not a LAS customer. And exactly.
Yep, perfect. That's the answer.
Yep.
Okay. What did we miss on the demo that we still need to go back to, since I have asked a lot of questions?
Honestly, I could go forever. So unless you have any more questions, I mean, I think that's a good place to end off on the demo portion of it.
No, I think it's incredibly cool. I think, to me, it feels very intuitive on what you can do, certainly actionable. Mm-hmm. And again, it is, to me, what I wish I would be able to have access to something like this if I were a shipper, right? And certainly SONAR does some of these things in our SCI product. If you can share your data with us, or if you can do that. But in this case, it's quick and easy. There's no setup. All of the data is already there because they're already using your TMS.
Yep.
And then they get access to really the power of SONAR and the context it can provide on them in what's happening in the market there. Yeah. I do want to ask a little bit more about LAS and RAS, logistics as a service, reporting as a service.
Yeah.
And tell me about that team. Mm-hmm. Specifically the logistics as a service. Like, clearly you have domain expertise. You've done this. You know what you're talking about. Very often when you're getting reporting, it's from somebody who's good at building reports, not someone who actually understand the theory, right? Yeah. Not necessarily the execution. Yeah. We pride ourselves on SONAR of like what sets us apart from others who might be providing data is that we've worked in this industry. I lived and breathed and did this in operations and pricing and network for 20 years before I came here, right? And most of our staff has that domain expertise. Yeah. Which means we can provide the context of why it matters instead of just providing a data point. Yep. And can problem solve on our customers when they say, like, we don't know why this is happening, let us do it. And it sounds like you all do the same. So can you talk a little bit about that on your teams and what that looks like?
Yeah, and so our managed services group is a little different than some other offerings. And we're truly carrier neutral, and we're truly an extension of the customer. So it's not like a buy-sell model or anything like that. So we really do basically the exact same thing any customer of our TMS is doing. That's where I started, and that's where everybody on my team started. Every single person that's working in the data that's being delivered here started with that kind of a background, which
So they know what they wanted to see when they were in the seat doing it.
yes,
Okay.
and the tool itself was built for our own uses, right? When this existed before customers had access to it, right? This was something that we used to help us manage our costs, right? And so we had other benchmarks, and now we've just basically enriched it so much more with the SONAR benchmark that's more real time and precise and whatnot. So yeah, as far as the expertise, that's the expertise that my team kind of brings in as far as on the reporting as a service side, and then obviously on the logistics as a service side. There's a ton of it's kind of like a center of excellence, right? And I mentioned that I made that comment. It was an older mentor of mine that also worked in the group. He would always say, "We get 50 years of experience every single year, about 50 customers or so, give or take," and it's really true, right? So you see a lot of people that come like, "Oh, you seem to know a lot about logistics. And how long have you been working on it? 2 years?" And so, yeah, because your exposure to all the different kinds of supply chains, all the different problems that people have, and you get to be a part of solving those. So it's a really good group, really good offering available there.
Very cool. So I really think that sort of the takeaway here from the demo is that having all of your data actionable in one place with SONAR data providing that market context, that intelligence of what's happening, not just with rates, but in the market as a whole. The idea is that faster decisions can be made, easier to spot problems and anticipate them and correct them quickly, better alignment across different teams. They're maybe working in different regions because you're setting up the same processes, hopefully, in all of those teams. And then hopefully less getting caught off guard, right? Because you kind of know what to expect and what to happen, what might happen as the market changes, and how to preempt that a bit by some of the things you talked about earlier, protecting the lanes and carriers that are performing really well and not flying blind, not having blind spots to some of the underperforming areas. So I think that is really cool. We have a couple of questions in the chat that we'll start, and then we can come back to a little bit more about some of our discussion, some other questions we have, and talk about some best practices at the end. But one of the questions first, if you have any questions, please enter them in the chat or Q&A, and we will ensure that we either get to them now or we'll circle back around one more time before we wrap up if any more have come in. Is this available only in the US?
So the data in the TMS isn't limited to the US. So if there's a budget or a benchmark in the EU that the customer has, that's something that we can use in the same format as this, right? And so like we mentioned how you can upload a budget or a benchmark rate into our system. I don't know as far as the SONAR rates are concerned, if there's plans to go into EU or not, but it's obviously whatever SONAR has availability to, we'll also have availability to, so.
Yeah, so SONAR has obviously domestic truck load rates, and then we do have international rates when it comes to shipping, air, ocean. We do not have domestic EU transportation rates at this time. It's just not a market that we've been into or had a lot of requests for. But depending on what that looks like and what this individual is looking at for EU data, we do have trade routes and where inbound is coming, where out from a port standpoint, as well as ocean and air, and can map those trends. And prices.
You guys have some pretty rich data, obviously beyond the costs that we talked about. We just scratched the surface of some of the data you guys have, and then we have a lot of, obviously, the transactional elements and data there. So I think the short answer is, yes, SONAR has some things, and we have some things. This is definitely designed more towards that U.S. truckload market, but there's probably something there to look into as well, probably for both.
So I think there are a couple of sort of key takeaways and best practices that we want to ensure that we touch on before we wrap up. So we've really established them as defining value, knowing your levels, establishing a process, and then and really being a champion of compliance. So with that, can we talk a little bit about, you talked a lot about defined value in the beginning.
Yeah.
And we talked about it a lot on the scatter plot, right? Of, cost and then value, what it is you value, on-time pickup, on-time delivery, whatever it is that client values. And then you go to compliance and those other things. Can you talk a little bit about methods for identifying like root cause of the variations in service and cost? When we think back, I guess, to the scatter plot again, as we're talking about value, those that are sort of the low-hanging fruit where there are issues.
Yeah.
Other than using that scatter plot, which makes it pretty apparent, what methods should be used for identifying the root cause of those issues?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good question. And people want an easy button, which is why I think best practices are really revolving around, I think, more of discipline and how you approach the problem versus a one-size-fits-all approach. I haven't found a one-size-fits-all approach. I don't think anyone has. They probably would have made a lot of money if they had. So we talked about defining value, like you said, and that's critical. A lot of people haven't done that, or maybe they define value as low cost and they never thought about it before, and they should go away from this webinar asking if that's really the value that they are talking about. And then knowing your levers, think of it as ways that you can impact change. So those can be more standard across shippers, but to the extent that you can use them differs maybe based on your industry or what's going on in your network, how it's set up. So examples, you can lower cost by increasing the utilization of your trucks, right? That has nothing to do with getting better rates, right? That's an important lever. You can use procurement activities. Can you do mini bids? Can you do, quarterly bids on top of, what are the ways you're going to actually lower cost and improve service? And so those are important to know. If you don't know those, then what are you doing? You're just measuring something for the sake of measuring. You need to know what kind of outcomes you're hoping to have from it, what kind of decisions you're going to make out of it. When I find that low cost lane where I'm going to root cause it and discover that the carrier is really not a great partner, what am I going to do about it? Am I going to procure a new partner, or am I going to do some kind of program with that carrier, that kind of thing, right? So,
can you guys pop the slide up one more time to make sure that we're touching on all of the best practices? Thank you. Yeah. You did a great job of remembering exactly what they were. So define value, we talked about that.
Yeah.
Know your levers, you talked about that. Establish a process. What are you going to do about it? Right?
Yeah, what are you going to do about it? The discipline that goes around all this, into how frequently are you going to look at it? Who's going to be involved in measuring success? Is everybody on board with the benchmark? Do people understand what it means when it comes to benchmarking service and cost? Do they agree on the value? Do they agree on the goals, right? Are you moving in the same direction? And
then I assume part of that is also, which might lead into the champion compliance, but part of that is also measuring the impact and improved incomes, not just looking at it, but then looking at the impact of what you're doing as well.
Yes, and getting credit for those things, and giving your carriers credit for those things, right? A lot of carriers will appreciate the fact that you're going to bat for them when you see these kinds of changes in the network. Being transparent as you can with carriers is really good for shippers to have those kind of partnerships. And then the compliance piece is in my opinion, how you execute a lot of that. So, and it's not glamorous work. It's not a word that people like to use. Compliance, it sounds boring, but I liken it to I've moved twice. Both of my houses, I painted the whole thing, and for that I used a paint sprayer. And the paint sprayer tool can make short work of a lot of painting, of course. It can also make a huge mess and cause a lot of problems if you don't use it correctly. The important part of using a paint sprayer is the prep, right?
Okay.
It's going to be, did I clean it? Did I tape up things that need to be taped up? Did I put gloss down?
Yeah, okay.
Right? So I see this process as that, right? This routing guide compliance, what we're talking about here, that's the stuff you can't replace. You've got to go in and tape up the stuff you don't want to get sprayed. You've got to give boundaries to what you're going to do. You have to take the time to clean the sprayer, right? These are the kinds of things that we have to be disciplined about. And we will see success in the numbers. We'll see success in all of that. but a fancy tool isn't going to fix that.
Correct.
Right? It's going to enable it.
Do something with it.
It's going to enable it, right? And so compliance is like that. Compliance
Having a
is
fancy car doesn't mean you're a good driver.
yeah, exactly. No, it doesn't. And so compliance is that, I'd say, not glamorous work that's required in order to have the network that you're hoping to have that delivers the value you need. So it's defining every load, every lane. You have a plan for how you're going to execute that, and that takes discipline. It takes work to maintain that, but yeah, you can reap huge benefits when you go through that. And really, it's kind of like how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time. That's how you have to just start. You have to start working through this, have those processes in place, those levers in place, and just start doing the work.
Yeah, but this makes it pretty easy to know where to start to do the work. So,
Exactly.
So literally everything you need to do the work has been served to you, and it's
Yes.
just a matter of doing it. So.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
All right, I think we should wrap with a couple of questions. If any more come in the chat, we'll circle back and answer those too. But can you tell us what implementation actually looks like for LAS? Is there an IT lift? What's that process look like?
Yeah. So for the logistics as a service, LAS, that's just a service component. So you're using the same technology. There's no new integrations or anything like that. For this reporting solution that we're talking about here, if we have the right commercial agreements, everything like that engaged already, then it's a flip of a switch, right? If you want to see your sonar data in this tool, it's an overnight. It's what matters to the person listening is there's zero IT effort.
It's like
there is
ask
no
for
IT
it,
effort.
sign the agreement, it gets turned on.
Yes, none, no IT effort.
No resources needed.
Yes. So you can wipe that. There's no professional services resources on our side either. So it's just let it go, right? So
yeah, very cool.
Yeah, very easy.
When you see people who do sign up, do you guys measure sort of the typical time to value for these capabilities once they start actually, and not just looking at it, but like you said, using it? Is that something you measure? Do you have some examples of time to value, how long that takes?
Yeah, so time to value, that's a good question. What we do measure is the subset of our customers that are actioning things in this tool. So we can say these are the customers that use this tool regularly, right? That group consistently has about 5% better rates across the board. Not saying 5% better in like cost per mile, I'm saying 5% better relative to that benchmark rate, right? So using that same kind of analysis. So really the point is customers that are engaged with this tool are seeing high-level benefits of it, right? And so I'd say you can expect to see value right away. One of the time to value pieces that's tricky is that a lot of times you don't quite right size until you have that RFP event. So it might be, 3 months from now, or you might be, 6, 7, 8 months from now. That's a lot of times where your rates get corrected.
This would make it easier though to potentially start doing mini bids, right? Like
Yeah.
you know what you need to bid out to get ahead of
Exactly.
maybe that large procurement event.
Assuming that's an option for you. And some customers don't have that as an option with the way they structure. But yes, that's exactly. Yeah. So that's a lot of times how people would get that time to value. As soon as they can start taking actions, is really is when they're going to start seeing the savings. That's when that happens.
Okay, so I think really, unless there's something else you wanted to touch on that we skipped, I think about that while I make this, if there's something else you want to add. But really the idea here is as we talked about how easy it is to sign up for this. It's a matter of requesting it, signing the data sharing agreement. You sign up for SONAR's Shipper Consortium via E2Open's no-touch offering. There's a data sharing agreement that's part of that then allows you to have the SONAR data in this once you have agreed to it, which again, I think you've highlighted incredibly the benefits of that and how powerful it can be. The data is anonymized once it's received. So if there's ever any concerns about that, we can certainly address them. And it's easy as that really for participation. I really think that's it for us, other than...
people can reach out and connect if they want to learn more. I mean, we're pretty open.
There it is.
Yeah, there it is. Yeah.
There it is. So the first is to the GoSonar.com website, where you can obviously learn significantly more about Sonar. There are also links there to request a demo. The next is to the E2Open website.
Yep.
And the last, which doesn't seem like it's showing up correctly, but it is linked there. The QR code is to a specific
Oh yeah, I didn't mention
report.
freight market index.
Okay.
So what we showed that on-time delivery metric with the banding. E2Open has a number of those KPIs that we publish. It's a free publication, so if you subscribe to that, it just gives you some high-level transportation
Very
markers.
cool. Yeah, it's literally, I tested it before. So it's literally as easy as scanning the QR code and it takes you right to the link of where that report is.
Yeah.
If no other questions come in through the chat, thank you so much for attending. Reach out either of those ways via website, but we also will be sending follow-up emails to everyone who attended with the opportunity to link to the recording today if you would like to be able to rewatch it or watch snippets of it. I'm sure we will also both be posting portions of it on our respective social media pages for our organizations and other places as well. So again, thank you. We hope you had the opportunity to learn a little bit more about what is offered. And Stephen, thank you for being here and coming and being here in person and giving such an amazing demo.
Yeah, glad to be here. Thanks for having me. It's been a lot of fun being here in studio. So yeah, it's good.
All right. Thank you guys. Have a great afternoon.
Yeah, thank you.